The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The local government of Valenzuela has implemented 3 ordinances banning illegal gambling and offshore gaming in the city. The LGU maintains that they consulted with PAGCOR and PCSO before issuing the ordinances. Mayor Wes Gatchalian claims that the enactment of these ordinances ensures that no POGO or other illegal gambling operations enter Valenzuela. Any person caught violating the ordinances will face a fine and imprisonment of up to 5,000 pesos, while owners, operators, and support providers of POGO and other online gambling activities in the area will face a fine of up to 300,000 pesos.
We do not intend to step into their jurisdiction on the national level. I'm looking more on the moral and aspect of it. Alam mo sa akin, hindi naman lahat pera pinag-uusapan. Hindi naman lahat revenue, magkano kikitain kung makakasira naman ito ng buhay ng pamilya.
However, Mayor Gatchalian clarifies the ban on gambling in the city is not yet a total ban. There are currently 9 existing e-games and e-bingo stations operating in the area, and most of their employees are Valenzuela residents. Currently, gambling establishments bring the local government revenues of up to 1.5 million pesos through their business taxes.
Siyempre, they are businessmen who invested already in the city. At iba sa kanila, matagal na actually dito. They cannot expand anymore or new groups coming in, hindi na ho pwede. I had to respect that because at the end of the day, nag-invest na rin po sila sa city on their, as a legitimate businessman with legitimate license from PAGCOR.
Recall that in June, Finance Secretary Benjamin Jokno announced that he wants to get rid of POGOs in the country despite the possible effect on revenue collections. POGOs have long been alleged to be linked to several crime syndicates as well as money laundering. Here to give us his insights on that report and share with us the state of the property sector, we have with us on the show David Lee Chu, CEO of Lee Chu Property Consultants. Good morning, Sir David.
Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, sir, let's get right to it. Office demand climbs to 46% in the first half. To what do you attribute this?
Well, 3 things. First is the traditional offices that continue to expand in the Philippines. Number 2, the BPO sector, despite all the issues about work from home and all these things, they continue to expand. And third is that for the first time in 3 years, the POGO sector took up quite a bit of space in the market in the second quarter of 2023. They took about more or less the same space as what they did in the last 3 years.
Okay. And talking about POGOs taking up significant amount of office space, what will be the impact then of Valenzuela's recent move to ban POGOs and of Secretary Jokno's push to get rid of the POGOs in the country?
Well, I think for one, so the national government has, when they created the POGO laws, they were fully respectful of every local government's position about POGO, which is why before you can have a POGO or casino in your city, you have to release a letter of no objection. So it's really up to the local government if they want these things or not, and that is entirely their decision, which is a testament to how much the national government respects the opinion and positions of local government. So, having said that, we have always put our position out there that yes, the country can decide what to do with the POGO sector, but we need to be aware of the economic losses that we will incur if we kick them out of the country entirely. So, my personal opinion is that it would be good for us to have the POGO sector here in the country because they do not cater to the gambling market here in the Philippines. Number 2, they employ a significant amount of the population. They inject a lot of investment into the country. They provide confidence for developers to build more office space and residential space. And all that translates to business taxes, real estate taxes, etc., that would have been zero without them. Now, later on, when our economy matures further, then maybe we can consider doing something about that. But bear in mind what Singapore did. Singapore, despite all its conservatism, at the peak of its economy, said we need casinos to operate in Singapore. And they did that decision 15 years ago. And at that time, the economy of the Singaporean economy was performing at its best at that time. And yet, even with that, they still needed the capital and market brought in by the gambling sector, the gaming sector. And so if somebody like Singapore, which at that time had what, 25, 30,000 per capita income dollars, was considering a move like that, what more us? How are we going to move from 3,500 US dollars to what, a meaningful 7, 8, 10,000 dollars per capita income? Well, I don't know, but I certainly think that the POGO sector operating here will contribute to that positively for the Philippines.
Okay, and sir, tell us more about provincial demand for office spaces. Do you expect this to climb further in the second half?
Yeah, so the provincial expansion of tenants has been very good because there is no space in Davao, no space in Iloilo. Companies were forced to explore other markets, and so they're exploring Bacolod. They expanded heavily in Cebu because there's no other option with scalable labor outside of Cebu. And so for the last 6 months, many tenants continue to expand in Cebu. Again, I have to stress, they're doing that because they can't find space in Davao, they cannot find space in Iloilo. There's no space anymore in Bohol, and which is why we're encouraging developers to build more office space in these 3 locations. And Bacolod is going to be a significant recipient of the overspill of Cebu BPOs. Number 2, what many landlords need to remember is that there is very, very little demand outside of the BPO industry. And so if they are going to build a building of any kind, they have to be mindful of the requirements of BPOs when it comes to site selection of real estate.
Okay. And we're talking about, sir, you said out of the BPO sector, there's really a weaker demand. And we've seen also pre-sales for condos decline in the second quarter. Why do you think that is, sir? And what is now really the state of the residential market?
So the landed house continue to climb, and that is very vibrant. Yes, there are many sellers right now coming out of the woods, meaning they used to not think of selling their asset, and now they're thinking of selling their asset. But landed house continue to climb, especially in enclosed villages and master planned townships. However, the condominium market, you're seeing a number of buyers now starting to resell their units in the secondary market. And that's climbing. And then the pre-sale activity, buyers buying pre-sale condos declined in the last 3 months, in the second quarter. I attribute that to 2 things. Number 1, 3 things. Number 1, the tighter sale criteria by developers when it comes to evaluating buyers, because they don't want people to make installments just for them to default later. Number 2, tighter credit standards, because the banks, given the high interest rates today, the banks are very, very careful, even more careful now about who they are lending to. And there's a natural constriction of credit in this environment. And of course, number 3, the impact of high interest rates around the world. The US just made a decision to keep interest rates where they are, possibly raise it further. And when they raise it further, it will mean another 6, 9, 12 months of high interest rates, and that will naturally choke many companies, and that process will choke many economies around the world. And people today are quite concerned about the impact of that to the global economy. But unfortunately, for some reason, the Philippines has become a counter-cyclical economy. Meaning, as the world suffers economically, the Philippines grows economically because of all the remittances coming here. Number two, all the BPO jobs that are created in the Philippines as the world goes into crisis, economic crisis. And third, the tourism market, because many people have not explored the Philippines, have not visited the Philippines, and if they have, it's not been recent, and yet they're hearing so many good things about the Philippines. And for the first time, they are now exploring the Philippines and finding that there's significant amount of infrastructure developed here that was not here just 3 years ago. And I would like to highlight a couple of things. Number one is that the Han Group in of Korea just, as you know, opened a Marriott hotel in Clark, and that became probably the best hotel in the entire Pampanga region. And then now it's complemented by the airport. And recently there was this big regional triathlete competition, and many of the foreigners that attended the competition flew in through Clark, went to Subic for the race, and flew out a few days after. Every single person was blown away by how awesome the airport is, how hassle-free the experience is, how from point A to point B, everything is a highway, paved roads, beautiful sceneries to Subic. It's been fantastic, and it's just changed and altered the perception of people in Philippines, about Philippines. And this is something that we've been saying for a long time, that many people who don't appreciate the amount of infrastructure that has been completed in the last 3 years is going to have a significant positive impact to tourism in Asia Pacific for the Philippines. And I'm very excited about that. And you see the impact of that in the amount of hotel space being built all over the Philippines, especially in Northern Luzon.
Well, that's definitely something to look forward to more. It's really exciting news. But unfortunately, Sir David, that's all the time we have for now. And we hope to speak to you soon again on our program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us this morning on One News Now. That's CEO of Lee Chu Property Consultants, David Lee Chu. One economist sees inflation continuing in a downward trajectory in the coming months. According to Security Bank Chief Economist Dan Roses, favorable base effects from the previous year should be able to pull down inflation in the near future. Amid apprehensions that the El Nino could push inflation anew, Roses says the phenomenon is only seen to add around 15 to 20 basis points around analyst baseline average estimates. However, the economist warns that it could be increases in wages or transport fares that could fan inflation.
That add-on will potentially add to the inflationary effect as well. No? So that's going to potentially be costly to employers. No? So you have cost-push inflation. But on the other hand, that's also more money in the pockets of workers. No? So that's demand pull as well. Any price fare hike that should actually bring the transport index contribution to inflation back to positive territory. No?
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. The Newsday continues here in One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. Here to give us one economist sees inflation continuing a downward trajectory in this. Japan's Mitsui, Hong Kong's First Pacific, and their partners have lifted an offer to buy out minority shareholders in infrastructure company Metro Pacific. The two conglomerates now offers 5 pesos and 20 centavos per share, or as much as 54.8 billion pesos. This is 12% higher than the previous offer, which received criticisms from minority shareholders who believe that the valuation placed on the company was too low. The deal could see the acquisition of up to 36.6% of Metro Pacific shares owned by minority public stockholders by a consortium that includes Mitsui, Japanese government-backed and fund JOIN, First Pacific, and their Filipino partners. This latest offer price represents a 22% premium to Metro Pacific's last close on April 26, before the offer was first disclosed, and is 37% higher versus a one-year weighted average price. The deal also hinges on stockholders approving the delisting of Metro Pacific's common shares from the Philippine Bourse in August. Metro Pacific has long been considered a strategic investment and privatization target due to its cheap valuation. Indonesian tycoon Anthony Salim's First Pacific, an investment holding company listed in Hong Kong, already owns 46%. If the consortium's offer is successful, Mitsui and JOIN combined would take up to 20% of Metro Pacific, with the remainder to be brought by existing shareholders including First Pacific and other Filipino partners. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.